Hi, Christine. How are you?
Good, Dana. How are you? It's good to see you.
Thank you. It's really good to see you. I'm so glad you could join me.
Oh, thanks for having me. Thanks for asking.
Of course, of course. And thank you for saying yes. It's been interesting with asking people to be on the podcast because some people are a yes right away. Some people are like, that sounds fun, but I'm nervous. And I always just tell people it's fun. And if you
hmm
hate it, I won't post it. And then um, then there's sort of the gamut of like, some people are like, I can't swing it, or I'm just really busy. I think some people are nervous and they just say that they're busy, which is fine. And I'm like, okay, I'll circle back with you in a few months
hmm
and we'll see how you feel. So, but good. All right. So I'm here with learning management consultant Christine Marks. And Christine, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do?
I am consulting with a biopharma company here in New Jersey, working with their learning management system, which is a platform that I've been working with for a lot of years. I won't say how many, but a long, long time. And I was brought in by actually a former colleague of ours to help them navigate their learning management system since I have worked with it for so long. And I actually worked briefly with the company that owns it. There are a lot of things that I know about it. I've experienced it from both a administrator level and a actual learner inside the system. So I was brought in to help, and I've been doing it now for like a little over a year and a half, and I enjoy it.
That's great. And so, is this a homegrown system that the company built, or is this a third party that the company uses?
Third party that the company uses, we actually used it when we worked together as well. So
Oh, okay,
yes.
great. And so I know everyone has gone through these trainings, right? We go through cybersecurity training, we go through kind of interpersonal HR training. A lot of us get training that's more specific to our jobs.
hmm
How, but I think a lot of us don't put a lot of thought into like how those trainings get created. It's sort of just an annoyance, right? Like it comes up annually. We have to click through it, we have to pass the quizzes.
hmm
Um, give us a little bit about the importance of that training and kind of how these systems came to be.
So they came about because I believe, there was a lack of training for for pharma in a whole. So, and it's gradually grown over the years. I've seen it grown so much in the last probably 10 years to where it was just your role training, when now it, like you said, cybersecurity, human resources training. So it's not just pharmaceutical training. And I always tell people when they say, oh my God, I don't feel like taking training, I don't want to do it, why do we always have to do it? And I say, you think about why we do it. We do it for that patient.
Right.
You may not have direct impact with that patient, but everything we do has some sort of impact. And you think about that patient, that person that is taking these medicines to help prolong their life or improve their quality of life, or that child that, is wanting to go to school or wants to play with their friends, but they can't because they're sick. And what we do is very important, from the person that may not think have an impact to the person that is going out to meet with those doctors, meet with those nurses, meet with the patients. So it starts with training. If you don't know how to do your job, how can you help people?
Of course, of course. So yeah, and then there are a lot of things that we deal with in the pharmaceutical industry that maybe some other industries don't. Obviously, we have HIPAA compliance where we're making
hmm
sure that protected patient information stays private to, obviously protect them.
Absolutely.
I know that, you've worked with things like good manufacturing practices in the past
hmm
where we make sure that, the drugs contain what they're supposed to, they are the correct efficacy, they're not moldy, have other
hmm
issues cause a recall. What are some other, pharma specific trainings that you see?
Are these products being marketed correctly? So, just as an example, not to be very specific, if there's a drug and it's marketed one way, you take the training to make sure it's marketed that way, and that salesperson doesn't go to the doctor's office and say, hey, well, I heard that you can do this. And also making sure when you go into certain markets, not only here in the US, but overseas, that there's certain things that you can't do. You can't say. You can't take a doctor out for a lavish dinner. You
Right.
can't promise them season tickets to a baseball game, football game. All of
Right.
that is encompassed in a training that some people say, wow, I really didn't know that. And now, as the world evolves, social media, what you can and cannot post on social media in terms of our pharmaceutical products, our marketed products. So
Right.
it runs a whole gamut down to harassment training.
Right.
We've seen that come full circle nowadays, where it's very important to know when you are working with different types of people, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And all that, guess what? It comes through training.
Right. And I think those are great examples, and those are examples of things that really have evolved over time and I think are going to continue to evolve because
Hmm.
obviously what was acceptable in terms of speaking to a physician in a pharma's, their office as a sales rep, what they used to be able to say and do is very different from what they can say and do now. And even just in the past few years, we've seen, alcohol at learning events like dinners where there's a presentation is now considered not appropriate. So there are always new changes happening, and if a company
Absolutely.
doesn't stay on top of that, then yeah, they could be looking at some serious consequences.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. And I think harassment's another one. I mean, as a culture we continue to sort of revise how we treat each other in the workplace, which
Hmm.
I think is a positive thing. I mean, even since I started my career, I have seen a lot of things and I have heard a lot of things and experienced some things. So, yeah, I don't think it's bad for people to get a refresher of, what is
Absolutely.
what is a conversation you should save for the weekend and what's a conversation you're having with that junior female employee who just started.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep, that's wild. And so, how did you sort of navigate into this world of training?
Um, that's a really interesting story. So I started working at our former company, and someone said, "Hey, why don't you come learn this?" Oh, okay. Let's see what it. And it started out very small, and then it just graduated, and it was something that I picked up very quickly. I was like, "Oh, this is very interesting." Every day it was something different. Logging in every day with something different, dealing with different people, and troubleshooting, and trying to figure out what was wrong, and talking to different people from different organizations, from our manufacturing people. And then I graduated to actually training trainers, and it every day was just a pleasure. And being in that role, it allowed me to meet people from all over the world, which I absolutely loved and adored. And I still have a lot of those relationships from our former company, from
Right.
people as far away as Australia.
I
And
love
it started out in training.
right. Because
So
yeah,
it's been fun.
right. And a lot of training is online now, but I'm sure you've done a lot of in-person trainings as well.
I have. So the platform has matured. Um, and the company that owns the platform is based here in New Jersey.
Okay.
And they would come in to our headquarters in New Jersey and do a presentation. This is what we've done. These are the new improvements, and ask any questions, and we'll be available to answer. And I always thought, I said, well, you know what? They came in, and it was our time, New Jersey East Coast time. And I said, well, what about our people in Europe? What about our people in Asia?
Right.
What happens with them? It's one thing to read something. It's something else to actually have that one-on-one interaction with it. So I got approval from my manager at the time to go ahead and quote unquote take the show on the road. So what I did was I learned everything that the company, the upgrades, the new improvements, and I took the show on the road. So I was able to go to Europe and invite our colleagues from other European countries to come sit. This is what's new. This is what's happening. This is what's exciting. And being that it came from me, most of them I already knew. It was like, okay, I get this. I understand this. Okay, more than it was easier to take it from me than to listen to someone they didn't know from another company that probably was very robotic in
Right.
what they did, and then apply the new changes in the platform to how we did our business.
That's
So
great.
it was very appreciative. And for those that joined um, live and in person, and then I had what I called my time with them. So I had smaller groups after I did my presentation. Okay, let's set up some time and let's go through what are your pain points? What are you going through? What can I help make better for you?
Right.
Um, because it's especially with the time zone differences, it's kind of hard to navigate that. And I think they really appreciated it. And again, I still have a lot of those relationships still, even how many years has it been? It's been more than four,
That's
right?
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I bet they appreciate that in-person touch and being able to
Mm-hmm.
ask questions in real time. And there is a big difference between an in-person training session where you know you have an expert in front of you versus just, it's sort of like you versus the computer and you're just clicking through as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And um, one of the great stories I have was I was in France and I was doing one of those sessions. And I know the majority, English isn't their first language. And I was speaking and, talking in my normal slow voice. And I happened to look over at her and she had this puzzled look. And like, and I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing wrong? Am I saying something wrong? And and then one of her colleagues spoke to her. Her command of the English language was not that great. And she was sitting there and I was speaking slow, but she just didn't understand. And it was that interaction. So if we were in a conference call on video call, I probably wouldn't have caught that. And I
Right.
told her, even though she could not understand me that well, I looked her in the face and said, "If you have any questions after I leave here, email me, because
Yes.
then the email will translate everything."
Of
And
course.
I said, we'll get this."
Right. Well, the language barrier is tough, and also, I
Mm-hmm.
studied German growing up and going to school because my grandmother was Austrian. And you learn about the weather, you learn how to order food, you learn how to be a tourist, you learn about, cars and trains and like historical words, but you don't often learn business language. And especially
Mm-hmm.
when you're in something as specific as pharmaceuticals, um, you know, the words might not be anything that they've experienced before. And
Mm-hmm.
some are sort of like words that have been created in the recent past to address, these specific, whether it's scientific or I know in German a lot of words are like compound words, so they'll just run three words together and that's one big word. Um, and so I've done some reading over the years of articles and internal stories with affiliates that are in Germany, Austria, things like that. And I definitely have to look up the some of the business specific words just to make sure that I'm tracking with what's going
Mm-hmm.
on.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But that is I normally like that. I really like that story because I just was like, oh my God, she doesn't understand what's wrong. She had this look, and then she didn't understand English very well. She
Right?
was asked to sit in, but she was very nervous and she didn't want to ask.
No, of course not.
Yeah.
'Cause she
So
doesn't.
it was just the look.
Right. She doesn't want to look like she can't do the job or can't understand what she needs to be learning. Totally.
Absolutely. Hmm.
And how have you found some of the other cultures in terms of their compliance, like their attitude toward learning and compliance? Whereas in my mind, I feel like other cultures may be, more interested in compliance than we are, but maybe that's not what you've experienced.
I think it's the same across the board. Everybody wants to do a good job and everybody wants to do the right thing. And I think if it's presented to them, the end goal is the patient.
Right.
Nobody wants to say, oh, I don't care about the patient. I'm going to do whatever I want. But I think the end goal is everybody wants to do the right thing for the patient. I mean, do I have my favorites? I absolutely do. I absolutely do. Some are, they're just bubbly and fun. Like I find that Australians, they're a lot like Americans.
Okay.
They are, well, you remember, they're a lot of fun. They
Yes,
are a
for
lot
sure.
of fun.
Yeah. I know. I've never been. I would love to go.
Love to go.
The plane ride has always been daunting for me, but it's on my bucket list for sure.
It's on my bucket list. It definitely is, but I 100% agree. When you see the plane ride over and you're thinking, okay, this is not a 5 day trip.
Right.
This is not a 5 day trip. This is at least 10 days.
Yes, you need to make sure that you, between getting there and getting back, between getting over the jet lag, you want to be able to like enjoy it, experience it for sure.
Hmm.
It's like if you
Yeah.
have 2 weeks, absolutely.
Yeah. When our colleagues used to come over, I would just be in awe. Like, how are you standing? How
Right,
are you? How are you functioning correctly?
right. It's hard. Yeah, apparently Taylor Swift said that jet lag is a choice, but I have never found that to be the case for me personally.
Yeah. It depends. Like it depends on you, the person. I've been to Europe. I go every year. I'm actually going in a couple of weeks.
Oh, amazing.
I always allow myself 1 day,
Yeah.
depending on how I feel, because I don't sleep very well on planes. So
Hmm.
when you fly overnight, I'm usually up for the most part of it. I keep waking up, but then when I land, I'm like, all right, hit the ground running, and don't take a nap.
Yes.
Don't take a nap. Just keep going until it's time to go to bed.
Right. Yeah, Europe is definitely fun. I did one trip younger in my career to Taipei and Hong Kong.
Hmm.
Um, and it was great, very cool experience, but the time was basically completely inverse from what I was used to, and
Hmm.
so hard for me to like be exhausted the entire time.
Ah, yeah, that's pretty bad.
Yeah, but really, a fun experience. I mean, we take those opportunities right when they come to us because it's like, who doesn't want
Absolutely.
to see the world, especially when you don't have to pay
Absolutely.
for it? And and I, and
Hmm.
I, and I do think there is an element of, especially when you work for a large corporation, like a lot of pharma companies have, offices around the world because they have, such different regulations and, just getting set up for reimbursement in those countries. So they all operate a little bit differently. And I think having that experience of meeting with them and working with them really gives you a sense of the global coverage, right? Like it's not just like we have our US training and we give that to everyone else. Like it
Hmm.
has to be for everyone because every market is different.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so who drives the content for a lot of these trainings and some of the changes that happen on an annual basis?
It depends on the organization. So GXP is GXP usually, but in GXP it'll encompass R&D, PV, GLP. Then you'll have your legal and compliance. Sometimes, depending on the organization, those can be two different groups.
Right.
Then you have HR. Then you have IT. IT is just this whole big organization, and you get your cybersecurity training. And I think they change, especially I think HR, IT, and legal/compliance change. They update their training as things happen in the world.
Yeah,
Our cybersecurity training every year it's slightly different.
of course.
Your legal, social media, what you can and cannot share.
Right.
Uh, and HR. Always, every year, HR is just slightly training and slightly inclusive of everything and everyone. So it depends, and I think training gets updated as the world changes.
Of course. Yeah, and especially with cybersecurity, I mean, always new threats. I know we've had, the phishing training for a few decades now, but then
Hmm.
I think there was an article earlier this year about a Disney employee who just clicked on one link and somehow they got access to all of his information and it was a huge hack and he ended up losing his job and it wasn't anything intentional. It was just that
Oh,
you click, yeah, it sucks. You
yeah.
click the wrong link and suddenly everyone has all your information. Or another one I've been seeing more of is, getting fake emails that look like they're from your company. And unless you look really closely, and, a lot of times when we see our email, it just pops up with a name or a group. And unless you
Hmm.
actually click on it to see, like, what is the actual email address, you might
Hmm.
not realize that it's not actually from your at companyname.com.
Hmm. Hmm. And what about if you have a work phone?
Right,
And how many of these text are we getting?
right,
You went through a toll. Please click on this link to pay the toll, or we have this opportunity for you. I've been getting more and more of those. I have my on my personal phone.
right,
I just report junk.
of
I
course.
don't read it. I don't even bother. And some people just don't know. I had someone that forwarded one to me. Like, can you believe this? Like, don't forward that. Never
No.
forward it. You don't know what it might do. Just delete it, report it as junk.
Right. Well, and
Yeah.
especially as, a trainer or an auditor, we take our work phones and I've done a lot of ride-alongs. Gone to a lot of, you know, informational presentations at dinners and I'm taking
Mhm.
pictures of the the product information and the proprietary, pitches that companies are
Mhm.
doing. So you have oftentimes a lot of this information on your phone, whether it's your company email or whether it's pictures you're taking of a site that you're auditing or a
Mhm.
ride that you're doing. And yeah, that's very in the wrong hands, that could be very detrimental to the company, obviously.
Absolutely. The hackers get smarter,
Right.
and those that wish to do harm get smarter, and so do we. We have to keep up with the times to protect, not only yourself. You have to protect your personal information. We have to protect the company as well.
Right, right. And we both have worked for some very large organizations. How do the smaller, say you're a pharma startup and you just have one new product and you're so excited because it's a rare disease product and you're going to be helping all these people, how do they keep track of making sure the people, now they're going to bring on a new 50-person sales force? Like, how do they make sure that their company is compliant and protected?
It does start with training. I have noticed. I haven't really worked with a very very small pharma, but I've worked with them, and a lot of them, they were still paper and pen training. Um, Documents in a drawer, documents in a file cabinet. And I think they are starting to realize to come to the digital side of things, putting your training in a compliant, you know, secured environment. And I think that's the key, making sure your stuff is secure, making sure your people are secure, making sure they understand. And it really is, it's all about information. Whether you are sharing things in a file drawer, you still have to understand that if you have a personal phone, don't do this, don't do that. If you have a company phone, don't do this, don't do that. And it's really about knowledge
Right.
and spreading that knowledge across the board.
Of course, of course. And then, how big of a part? I know I've dealt with this a lot in various capacities, especially within pharma, but how do organizations determine who's covered for the purpose of all these different trainings? Because obviously, like everyone in the company is going to get cyber security training, but you mentioned
Hmm.
GXP, like good manufacturing practices, pharmacovigilance. How do organizations determine who needs what training?
I think it's the author, usually the author, and again, every organization is different, but usually it starts with the author of whatever that training is. If it's a standard operating procedure, an SOP, then the author should identify, well, I think these groups need to have some training on this SOP specifically. And I've seen it in several organizations where it's the author or it's a team from that
Right.
department that determines, okay, we are the team for, just as an example, we are the standards and training team. We determine what groups need to be, either they need to train on this or they need to be aware of this. So
Right.
it depends on the organization, but I think it starts with the author or the team of that SOP or work practice or policy.
Okay. Yeah. And how do you deal with non-compliance? I know occasionally I've seen someone who, their training is outstanding for 90 days, for 120 days. They just don't seem motivated to get that done. How do you deal with employees like that?
You have to hold them accountable some way, somehow. Now, how they are held accountable, I've seen it in several organizations where their sales incentive is affected.
Okay.
Um, I've seen a message from the chief compliance officer where they get a message from the chief compliance officer like, hey, I see you are overdue on this training. Nobody wants to be called to the chief compliance
Right.
officer. No one wants. So no one wants to get that email. And it's the manager as well. You make sure that your people in compliance. You set up, depending on your platform, you set up reports for the manager to get for them to be on top of their people. Hey, I see you have this training. It's coming due in 5 days. Make sure you get it done. Hey, it's coming due in 3 days. Make sure you get it done. Hey, it's overdue. Get this done ASAP. And sometimes you can build it into that employee's performance.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, at the end of the year, say, okay, you had 100 training items that were deployed to you. Out of those 100, you were late
Right.
on five. Yeah.
Right.
So hold people accountable for the training.
Right. Because, yeah, I mean,
Doing it
tone at
one
the top.
time.
Right. Yeah, tone at the top is very important because obviously you want, if it's the sales organization especially, like people need to understand that this is a critical part of the job and that, selling before training is not what they want and not what will be
Mhm.
incentivized. But yeah, I've also seen a lot of large organizations where you just have these stragglers where like it's has nothing to do with management telling them to deprioritize the training. Certain people just don't want to do it for whatever reason.
Yeah, and I think that's a deeper conversation. Find out, why do you not want to do this? Do you
Right.
not understand the importance of this, especially for an organization like sales? Do you
Right.
not understand it? Do you not get it? Or is there something else going on? Maybe you're just, it's up to the person's manager to get to the root of the problem, because there should be no reason for you not to do it. This is part of your job.
Right. And I mean, I usually, you do it at lunch, you click through it. Yeah, it's not the most exciting time you've ever had, but it's also
Mhm.
not like terrible, right?
It's not terrible.
It's it's like cartoon people and, scenarios and then like a quick little quiz and you only have to get like a 70 or an 80 on it usually. Like,
Yeah, or you just read it.
right.
If there's no quiz and you're just reading it, why can't you do it?
Why can't you open it and close
Hmm.
it and click
Yeah, the
complete?
only ones that I see that may struggle are those that just start with the company and they
Mhm.
may have 150 training items to get through.
Right.
That I understand, but you get through it, you prioritize it, and you make sure things are done
Right.
before. And it's also in within the training world, you make sure that these people have sufficient enough time to complete the training.
Right.
If And I've experienced that before, where a training is deployed to someone, they have 5 days. What if they got that training in those 5 days and they were on vacation?
Right. Or what if the training is a read and understand of 15 SOPs that are each more than 10 pages long like that?
Mm-hmm.
If you
That's
are I could see how someone might fall behind. I think we're sort of assuming, right, that someone like maybe doesn't care about compliance or they don't care about training. But the flip side of that is what if you're someone, and I think I probably fall into this category where if you're assignment is to say that you read and understood a document. I really don't want to click that I did it unless I understood the document. But so
Hmm.
now we're looking at if we have 150 pages of SOP to read through, it's going to take me a minute to actually feel like I can attest that I understood what I read.
Absolutely. And it's in part the training organization as well. Um, I've never thought it was fair to send 150 training items to someone who's just joining the company and expect them to have it done in 30 days.
Right.
That's not feasible. That's not attainable. You want them to feel good about it. You want them not to be stressed. You want to give them ample enough time. If you give them, and this is just an example, if you give them 60, 90 days, or you
Right.
stagger the training, then you make them feel good. Okay, I can do this. I can get through this. And it's communication as well. Their manager should communicate to them, okay, you're going to get this many in this days, this many in that days, this many in this days. And this is what you need to do for your job first, then HR second, and maybe I throw some IT stuff in there, maybe some compliance things in there. And by 90 days, this is how many you will have completed. So the learner doesn't feel overwhelmed, because if they feel overwhelmed, then they may not be apt to finish their training on time.
Right. Or and then you have to worry about retention, right? Like if
Hmm.
they have way too much to do in a short amount of time, they're going to get it done because they're supposed to, and they don't want it to
Hmm.
negatively affect, their performance or their employment. But did they really get out of it what you wanted them to get out of it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a science to it for sure.
It sure is. And I've seen a lot.
I'm sure. And how did sort of, just to go, all the way back, like what did you study in school? How did you start your career? What did you think you wanted to be when you grew up?
Well, my degree is not in training, not in pharmaceuticals. I
Right.
have a degree in psychology.
Okay.
When I was first starting out, I thought I wanted to be a psychologist. I worked for the city of New York for their Department of Children and Family Services
Oh wow.
on like a volunteer basis, just to see if I liked it. And it was so upsetting
Yeah.
and so sad, and just it was so draining. I said to myself, I don't know if I can do this
Yeah.
all day, every day. I was like, I don't think I can do this. I just was like, I can't do this. I really can't do this. And I did get offered a job working with family services, and I turned it down. It's like, I don't know if I can do this.
Yeah.
It was like,
I think
this is really sad.
yeah.
But the psychology degree does help,
Of course.
how to deal how to deal with people, emotions, and different situations. It does help me in my day to day, though.
I can believe that. Yeah, and I totally understand, that would be a very heavy headspace or career to have been in for the past few decades. And
Hmm.
I also have a degree that has nothing to do with pharmaceuticals at all. I think we just sort of happen into, we get an opportunity and it goes well, and that turns into something else, and maybe we figure out what we like and what we don't like, and
Yep,
um,
absolutely.
yeah, that's great though. It's great. It's great. I think, most of the people I think that I've interviewed so far for the podcast have done a lot of things. They've worn a lot of hats, and they haven't really followed like one specific path to say, oh, I grew up and I knew that I was going to be a state senator, and then I studied poli sci, and then I interned, and then I ran for office, and like it's not. Most people don't really know, like, have that calling and just follow like one specific path to get there their whole life.
Agreed, agreed.
That's great. Okay, well, what would you like to leave our audience with? I do have a large compliance and pharma audience. What would you tell them about, the importance of training or any innovations that you've encountered?
Um, Not so much innovations, but for our pharma audience, because we're going through a lot now, just how the world is and how everything is changing. The only, especially for those that are new to this career, the only thing I can suggest is always be flexible. Always be flexible, always be open, and always learn how to pivot because you never know what's going to happen. I fell into this role just by accident. And if I wasn't open to it, I wouldn't have learned it. I wouldn't have understood how much I enjoyed it and learn everything that you can. Even if it's something you're like, oh, I don't know about that. You never know. I've done a lot of different things in this farmer career, and I can say a lot of it has been interesting. Even if I didn't want to do it, I went on a couple of audits. I was like, okay, this is interesting. I knew enough that I didn't want to do it. I knew enough that I didn't want to do auditing. I've been involved in inspections.
Okay.
Very fun, just very stressful.
Yeah.
Very fun, very stressful. And then you meet a lot of new people along the way. That's really it. You know, just pivot, learn all you can, and be flexible.
That's
Don't you know? Don't say this is what I'm going to do and that's it.
right.
Pharma, there's so much to learn in pharma.
There really is.
You never know what might work for you.
Right. And what would you say to someone who is in pharma? Maybe they're either just starting out or they've been in a role for a long time and they're having a little bit of burnout. How would you remind people that every person involved in the organization is serving patients?
Talk to other people from other departments. You know, from a group that you may never thought you would ever talk to before. See if you can get a tour of the manufacturing floors. See if you can go visit them. And you'd be surprised. You'll walk through the lab like, wow, that is what. And I think that may re energize you.
Right.
Um, Ask to do a ride along. Go visit doctor offices. Try auditing. Try different things that, you know, step outside of your comfort zone.
Right.
Um, Even if you're not comfortable, just try it. And there's nothing wrong with having a conversation with someone. You'll find that a lot of people, they do want to talk and they do want to share and they do want to see if you're interested. Like, you know, this is what I do and this is how I do it. And people will be, you never know that one conversation that you have with someone, it may change your outlook and
I
bring you out of that burnout.
Yeah, great point. There's so many different opportunities. I love doing ride-alongs. I've gotten to do a bunch of them, whether it's medical science liaisons or account managers, people in the sales force. I think it's so great to actually experience what those people who are like our points of contact with healthcare providers are doing and saying, and also just the burden that's on them to document, to follow a lot of rules, um,
Mm-hmm.
to answer questions a very specific way, to use technology in a very specific way. I think they're really fun to do.
And talk to people from other countries.
Absolutely.
That is that's definitely a big one for me. Talk to people from other countries, and you'll be surprised what you can learn.
I love that. Well, Christine, I'm so glad you got to join me. It was amazing to see you again.
Yes, you too. Thanks for having me, Dana.
Of course, and hopefully we'll get to catch up soon.
Yes, thank you. We'll talk
Awesome.
soon.
Okay,
Bye.
well, have a great day. Thank you.
You too. Thanks. Bye.